This video is sponsored by AE Juice. In this video I will try to recreate the Vecna scene from Stranger Things Season 5. And I'll tell you right now, everything didn't go according to plan. First of all, we need to model Vecna. So in a fresh blend file I created this base mesh and then went to work in sculpting mode. I gave him these hollow areas on the arms and did a couple of passes, adding more and more detail until I got this result. In the new season, Vecna has this really cool look where he has these sort of vines or tentacles wrapping around him. So to create that look, I tried this curves based workflow where I could basically paint on each tentacle and it would wrap to the mesh shape. And this was really cool because I could create multiple layers that sort of wrap over each other, creating this pretty cool result. And to get the look where the tentacles are sort of flowing like this, I animated the bump texture to slide along the UVs of the tentacles. I did some basic texture painting, rigged him in Mixamo, and that was Vecna done. But now we need to create this portal environment, so I went to work modeling this gate and then used that same tentacle workflow to get these vines that come out of the portal. And to get the upside down sky in the background, I grabbed some VDB clouds that I simulated for a different project, scattered those in a new blend scene, and then grabbed some lighting assets from the AE Juice library. Then I colored them red, gave the clouds this blue ambient light, and that gave us this effect where the red lightning would light up the dark clouds from behind. And now is a great time to tell you a little bit about AE Juice. AE Juice is a huge collection of bundles and packs with assets that fit perfect for VFX and motion design. You can use it directly in your editing software or use their standalone browser like I did for this video. Everything is really high resolution and pre-keyed, so you can just drop it into your Blender scenes and get some really cool results. And right now when this video uploads, they're running a huge 50% off for the big VFX bundle, and that gives you access to all of these effects you see on screen right now. Then I rendered this as an image sequence and brought that into my portal scene as a plane. I dropped in some free background assets from Sketchfab to save some time there, added some emissive materials for the lights, and finally gave it this foggy look by using a volumetric material. Then to have the characters actually move and do things in this scene, I used my Rococo suit to quickly grab some character mocap, retargeted that to my characters, and then used Cascador to simulate the ragdoll stunts. To create the effect of this slime layer that reveals Vecna as it tears apart, I opened a new blend file and created this cloth simulation setup. Then I pre-scored this and used a dynamic paint modifier to gradually have it tear apart, and the shrinking factor made it sort of snap into place like this, which I thought looked pretty cool. But now the mesh is completely static before tearing, so I created a secondary simulation to get the sort of bounciness of the slime and attached the tearing sim to this using a surface deform modifier. And to give it an additional level of detail, I used this slime texture from the AE Juice slime packs as a bump texture, brought the roughness way down, and this gave us this really gross slimy look. And this was looking really good, but as I went to render this scene I realized a huge problem. The combination of a dark scene with multiple light sources and a ton of reflective materials meant that the renders came out super muddy like this. And sure, I could throw a ton of more samples at it, but that would increase the render times to the point where I couldn't get this video out in time. So I had the brilliant idea to switch to Blender's little brother of a render engine, Eevee. And Eevee is quite a competent render engine, but it takes a lot of more manual work to get a realistic image out of it. So for example, to get the global illumination, the sort of light bounces that create this ambient lighting effect, you need to manually bake that using an irradiance volume. But I've dabbled with Eevee before, and I saw some great renders from Eevee to really hype me up. But as I switched engines and hit render, so now I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Cycles was too slow and Eevee plainly didn't work. Probably a skill issue to be honest, but the deadline for this video was approaching fast. So I desperately tried to optimize the scene, removing lots of geometry and simplifying the lighting setup, and still Eevee refused to cooperate. And this was so frustrating because I could preview the scenes in the viewport and it looked fine, but then as I went to render it, nothing. Anyways, what I finally had to do was to set up my camera angles first and then basically go in and delete everything that was outside of view, decrease the render settings like crazy, and finally I got some images rendered in my folder. And once I had these final renders that admittedly looked pretty cheap, I could then render these different effect passes in a separate blend file using the AE Juice assets and comp that into my scene in post. And this really helped bring more detail to the scene, like the fog in the background or these dust effects that I just comped in as planes. And if you've seen some of my previous projects, you know that I typically do everything in camera, so to speak, but this was a really fun experiment experiment, integrating some 2D assets into my 3D scenes, and it almost feels like cheating because you can get a really detailed result in no time at all. So like this dust kick up from the force push, I could have done a full smoke sim, but just placing some dust hits in a smart way is probably 10 times faster and honestly gives a really good result in this case. To get the flamethrower effects, I decided to use a combination approach of a simulation and 2D effects. So to get the base sim, I created this setup in a new blend file and had this inverted dome to act as a force barrier. Then I baked that to a VDB file, and here's a great trick on how you can fake more detail in your fire simulations. So if you plug a noise texture into the emission strength and crush the contrast using a color ramp, you do get some extra detail, but it doesn't flow realistically with the simulation. So add in an attribute node, type in velocity, and use that as the vector to drive the noise. This makes the noise texture flow naturally with the movement of the flames, giving you a ton of free detail. And if you look at this before and after, you can see a huge difference there. So I rendered that flamethrower scene and then comped in some stock flames on the ground here. And I think those flames on the ground there really added a lot of perceived detail to the fire as a whole. After everything was rendered and I gave it some love in post, comping in some extra assets, this was the final scene. So unfortunately I missed the deadline and lost some hair trying to get this scene to render, but overall I'm pretty happy with what I managed to churn out after all. Especially the Vecna model itself, I think that might be one of my favorite sculpts yet. But I guess this is a great lesson to enter the new year with. Sometimes you can give it your best and still fall short of the vision you had in mind. And even through these bouts of frustration, you're learning and improving as an artist and ultimately becoming a more resilient person. But I thought it might be interesting to show you guys sort of the reality of making projects like this. But yeah, big thanks to AE Juice for bringing this video to you, and I really enjoyed working with his assets and seeing how much detail and texture it helped bring into my scenes. And I'm looking forward to keep using these assets in future videos as well. If you want to grab some of this for yourself, I'll drop some links in the description. There's even some great free assets there for you to grab, so don't miss out on that. Anyways guys, thank you very much for watching this video and for all of the support in 2025. I wish you all a happy new year, whether you celebrate it alone or with friends and family. Take care guys, and I'll see you in the next one.